Assalamu alaikum Facebook fam. It's Kaba Kashif Muhammad, LLIC, Light and Life Rebuilding Center, a center of hope and salvation for all nations. Kaba Kashif Muhammad is who I am. And this is my Savior's Day / Emancipation of a Nation, Savior's Day 2019, the final warning. And right now I'm on the beaches of beautiful Riviera Beach, Florida, Palm Beach County. And it's a beautiful sunny day, and I just want to expound on a little bit on the universal law. I want to expound on the coming by night and give the people a further detailed explanation of the universal law, what Allah God want the people to know, because He, Allah God, He want me to clarify a few things. Make sure that everybody got, the universal truth that He, Allah God, want the people to know. So I'm gonna expound on it a little bit, converse with you today, my Savior's Day 2019. He, Allah God, is about to bring the wrath of destruction down upon His land, and right now we're seeing bits and pieces of it, but the fullness of the wrath of Allah haven't fully entered this land as of yet. But when it do, it's gonna be a disaster. So He, Allah God, wants to make sure that everybody got the universal law. Everybody got the universal truth that He want the people to know, so there won't be no excuse when the wrath of Allah enters into this land. The fullness of His wrath enter into this land, America. So once again, this Savior's Day 2019 / Emancipation of a Nation, the final warning. So I want everybody to tune in. Let's go converse, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit. I'm gonna converse with you a little bit on it, and y'all just tune in, y'all lock in. I want Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Chi-Town, all the different cities, all the nations around the world, everybody just lock in. Savior's Day 2019 / Emancipation of a Nation. This is the final warning. Y'all lock in. Assalamu alaikum, Facebook fam. It's Kaba Kashif Muhammad, LLIC, Light and Life Rebuilding Center, a center of hope and salvation for all nations. This is my Savior's Day / Emancipation of a Nation, the final warning. Now we must move swiftly because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time, Facebook fam. So we must move swiftly into the universal law so that we can get the truth to the people before the wrath of Allah, the fullness of His wrath, engulfs the land. Now, if we go to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad book, Our Savior Has Arrived. Okay, if we go to page 122, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we say wisdom, power, force. There is no power or force of power until we have the wisdom to produce it. So basically what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling us that in order for you to reach your spirituality, you must come through a body of knowledge, universal truth, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. That's the only way that you're going to enter into the kingdom. The kingdom of Allah is spiritual. This is the spiritual kingdom. Okay, it's a physical aspect of it as well, but the kingdom of Allah is a spiritual kingdom. It's a spiritual kingdom of peace and righteousness. But you have to come through a body of knowledge. You have to come through the universal law to be able to enter into the kingdom. So we hear Farrakhan coming on Facebook saying that he's not going to follow the universal law. He's not going to He don't want the religion of Abraham. He don't want the religion of the prophets. But the religion of the prophets is part of that body of knowledge that we need to bring in the spirit, to produce the spirit. Without that body of knowledge, there can be no spirit. Okay, so we must come through the universal truth, which is the will of Allah. We must understand that the Quran and the Bible is all the true understanding of the Bible and the Quran is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. Okay, what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us is that key that'll open up that'll bring in the spirit. So if we reject the true interpretation of Scripture, then we're rejecting the power of Allah. We're not letting the power come in. Okay, now let us move on. So now, if we go to the Theology of Time, page 104, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that if we see one emerge out of all this darkness, what force or power in the darkness brought it out? One could not have come out of darkness unless force was in the darkness to bring it out. In the universe, there is a force that moves seemingly unmovable stars. After so long and so long, the star which we see at one point has moved over to another point. If that star moved over to another point within 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years or 1,000 years, force made it move. It could not have moved alone. This teaches you to go back and get your scientist, and I will contend with him, and he will contend with me, that the force of the actual space seemingly looks as though nothing is moving, but it brings out objects to us that are hidden in it to our view. Okay, so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that this is the Theology of Time. Okay, this is the Theology of Time, page 104. Okay, so now, he also tells us that this one was already here in the dark, but nothing did not give it to us until time brought it about. Then when the time brought it about, it merged out there into our view as a revolving light. Okay, now we go to if we go to the Theology of Time, page 91, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that if God created himself out of matter, which still exists, then he took it out of the darkness of space. So this is the beginning of creation. Some 78 trillion years ago is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is trying to give us. Okay, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is trying to tell us that on page 104, he's trying to tell us that one emerged out of darkness. Okay, so the darkness symbolizes that this was a material being. The originator of the heavens and the earth was a material being. He was a brother that the power of Allah did not reach him at that time. But the universal law was to reach that dark matter, that first God that had no knowledge of the universal law. He had no wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He was just material matter. He just was a material being. His thoughts was material. His actions was material. This was just a material being that had no spirituality, had no universal law to dictate his actions. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that it was force and power in the darkness brought it out. But the universal law, the power, the spirit of Allah brought that first God out of the dark and brought him into the light of universal understanding. Now let us move on. Now we go to page 43 and 44 of Our Savior Has Arrived. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that Just think it over. A little small atom of life rolling around in darkness. Think it over, building itself up, just turning in darkness, making its own self. Let's go into it. Do I have any proof? Yes, sir. He made himself in total darkness. He put his own self turning on his own timetable in the black womb of the universe. So the womb of the universe is the earth, because the earth is what gives vegetation. The earth, the vegetation in the earth is what is used to produce the sperm. Okay? So when man emits his sperm into a woman, it brings forth an egg and brings forth a child. So the womb of the universe is the earth. Okay? So now, it says that he started rotating. He demands every life that comes into the universe today to start turning first over to me, for I had that to do myself. Now I am going to see that every life that comes into this universe come out of total darkness. Every life, yes sir, it must come out of total darkness. Out of the womb of our mother did we come. We were created there out of the sperm that come. We were created there out of the sperm that was emitted into that total dark room, the womb. It took that to make that child. He couldn't be made in the light. He must be made in total darkness. So now, then he says that neither by nature we are born in total darkness. Think it over. And if by nature light brings us out of darkness, and if by nature we walk in light from out of total darkness, and if by nature we can think through darkness and bring light out of that darkness by our own brains, we did so with the white race. So now the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling us that in the beginning there was just a God, a black God, a material God that was in the dark. There was no universal light to dictate his actions. There was no universal God for that God. That God was just a material being. So now this was some 78 trillion years ago at the foundation of the universe. Now when the light touched that first God that created the heavens and the earth, he started to rotate in the womb of the universe, which is the earth. His mind started to rotating, building itself up into the universal law. His mind started to rotating, building itself up into spiritual understanding. His mind started to rotating, building itself up into the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the universe, into the power, the force that governs the universe. And once he grew and evolved into the universal light, he did then start defining the creation, giving the creation definition. Okay, he laid the foundation of who God was. He gave us the understanding of his self-creation, how he created himself from that atom of life, how he created himself from that universal light that touched him in the dark. So now, this is what the will of Allah is all about. The universal light, the understanding of the creation, the understanding of who God is, the understanding of how God created itself from the power, from the universal light, from the atom of life. This is all what the will of Allah is all about. The definition of the creation, what right foods to eat, who Allah God is, who we are, how the white race got here, who they are. All this is the will of Allah. All this is in relations with the will of Allah. This is the power. Okay, this is the body of knowledge. This is the base, the foundation of knowledge that all black people need to come through in order to reach their spirituality, in order to reach the power of their own being. Just like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us in Our Savior Has Arrived, page 122. He says that we say wisdom, power, force. There is no power, force, or power until we have the wisdom to produce it. So now, without the universal law, without the will of Allah, without the definition of the creation that was laid at the foundation of the universe some 78 trillion years ago, without that base, that body of knowledge, without that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the creation, we cannot produce the spirit of Allah. You cannot produce the power of your own being. Okay? Without that body of knowledge, you're just leaning on your own understanding of the creation. Okay? You're putting your will against the will of Allah. Okay? This is the God. This is what we call putting the God beside God. Because you're putting your own understanding of the creation when Allah God has already established his understanding of the creation. So whose word is going to stand? Is it going to be the will of Allah? Is it going to be the universal truth? Is it going to be with that body of knowledge that was laid at the foundation of the world some 78 trillion years ago? Or is it going to be your own body of knowledge? You're going to put your universal light as a God beside God. So now you have produced an idol. This is what we call an idol engraving image. Okay? When you use your own wisdom, come through your own wisdom, you putting the God beside God. Because the universal power, the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is the God that we must submit to, the will of Allah. So when you don't want to submit to the universal light, the will of Allah, that body of knowledge that was laid at the foundation of the universe, now you rejecting Allah. Okay, you're an unbeliever. You're an unbeliever. You don't believe in God because you don't believe in that power, that will, that universal law, that light that governs the universe. So now let us move on. So now, what He, Allah God, intends to do, if we go to Surah 30:50. In the Holy Quran.
Look, therefore, at the evidences of Allah's mercy, how He breathed life into the earth, making it green and flourishing after its state of death. Surely He it is, the same God, who will raise the dead to life in the hereafter, for He is the possessor of power over every desired thing.
So now, He, Allah God, breathed life into the earth, making it green and flourishing. So now, the life that Allah God breathes into the earth is the power, His Spirit, His Holy Spirit, that quickens the soul, and that quickens the mind of a supreme architect. And that supreme architect, that power enables that supreme architect to bring forth wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is the power, because it takes the power to produce the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is the God itself. That's the will of Allah. Allah works through the mind of a supreme architect. He sends forth His power, His force, and that spirit quickens the mind of that chosen one that He chose to bring forth His will to the people. So when that chosen one bring forth a higher understanding of the times and what must be done, this is the body of knowledge that we must come through in order to reach our spirituality, in order to enter into the kingdom of Allah, in order to enter into that one force, that one power, to be at one with Allah. we must come through the will of Allah. Now, if we go to Psalms in the Bible, let me check my device, fam. Okay, we good. We good. If we go to Psalms 104, Psalms 104:30 in the Bible. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, and they are created, and thou renewest the face of the earth. So thou sendest forth thy spirit, and they are created. So when Allah sent forth his spirit, this is the creation. This is his force and power is what recreates the universe. His force and power is like a revolving light. When Allah keeps recreating, he keeps reproducing the universe. When he sends forth more light, when he increases his light sevenfold and to that chosen one, and that chosen one, that light enlightens the mind of that chosen one. And this is Allah talking through that chosen one. That chosen one bring forth what Allah God wants the people to know. So Allah recreates the universe with his power, with his spirit. He sends his spirit and to that chosen one. Okay, now let us move on. And we go to John. When we go to John 4, (21 through 23). Okay, Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Salvation is of the Jews. The original Jews, the original Hebrews is the nation of Islam. The belief is in that will of Allah. So then it says that the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. So he, Allah God, want us to worship him in the light of universal truth. In other words, we must come through the universal truth, the will of Allah. We must worship Allah in spirit and in truth. So when you coming into the will of Allah, when you submit into the will of Allah, when you believe in the universal truth, the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that body of knowledge, that supreme architect bring forth to the people. When you believe in that, now you worshiping Allah in spirit and truth now. You worshiping Allah in spirit and truth because you submitted to that universal truth. You submitted to that universal law. You submitted to the will of Allah, and with it and within that will, within that law, okay, the essence of that universal law is force and power. The essence, the nature of that universal law that supreme architect bring forth is force and power. Okay? That the power of Allah dwells in the universal law. If we go back to what Honorable Elijah Muhammad said again, we say wisdom, power, force. There is no power or force or power until we have the wisdom to produce it. So now we know that the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, which is the will of Allah, which is the universal truth, which is the universal law that governs the creation, the definition of the creation. That's the will of Allah. That's the Bible. That's the Holy Quran. The universal law is the Bible and the Holy Quran, the true interpretation of it. And that true interpretation of the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us, because it was twisted up a little bit. So Allah sent that divine supreme architect, Master Muhammad, the one that taught Elijah Muhammad. He taught Elijah Muhammad 3.5 years the universal law, the true interpretation of the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible. And Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought that universal law, the true interpretation of scriptures, to us, to open up the kingdom, to open up the spirituality, because that's where the power dwells at, in the universal law, the true interpretation of the scriptures. But the Minister Louis Farrakhan, he don't want to comply with the true interpretation of the scriptures. He don't want what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. He don't teach the universal law. He don't teach what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. He don't teach in the Nation of Islam what the Master Muhammad, the one that taught Elijah Muhammad, gave us. He never taught it. He relies on his own wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He wants to be a God beside God. He wants everybody to worship an idol, his body of knowledge. He don't want the body of knowledge that Allah instilled into the mind of that supreme architect. He don't want that power that Allah instilled into the mind of that supreme architect and made that supreme architect wise enough to give us the true interpretation of these scriptures. He don't want that. That's where the power dwells at. He wants his own universal law. He wants to impose his own understanding on the people. And this is why the Minister Louis Farrakhan is in a world of trouble. And those that believe in the Minister Louis Farrakhan is in a world of trouble. So now let us move on. So now, if we go to Surah 2782. So now, He, Allah God, intends to recreate the universe again now. 78 trillion years ago was the first beginning of the creation. 78 trillion years ago was when the foundation of universal understanding was established. The definition of the creation. Everything in the universe was defined 78 trillion years ago. That's that foundational knowledge. Okay, now, what Allah intends to do now is recreate the universe again, starting from scratch. So now, Allah God makes his man. Allah God chooses a man right now today, 2019. In this day and time, Allah God chooses a man from the materialistic of darkness, from the materialism of darkness. This is the man that Allah God chooses that have no spirituality in him. He's a material man. He's a man that's ignorant to the universal law. He's a man that just living his life through the dictates of the materialism of the universe. Okay, what he see around him, this is what dictating his life. The universal law have not reached him. It's not the dictation of his life. His life is dictated by the materialism that's around him. He's a materialistic man. Allah God is not a choosing matter. The darkness of materialism. A material man to recreate his universe just as he did in the beginning some 78 trillion years ago. Now let us listen to Surah 2782.
And when the judgment becomes due against them, we shall bring forth for them a grossly materialistic person, which will rule over them. That is because the people did not have firm faith in our messages. And remind them of the day when...
Now, let's go for one more time.
Tall scene.
Hold up.
I am...
Surah, we on Surah 27:82.
And when the judgment becomes due against them, we shall bring forth for them a grossly materialistic person, which will rule over them. That is because the people did not have firm faith in our messages. And remind them.
So now, here like God is telling you that at the time of the judgment, at the time of the resurrection of the people, Allah God is going to choose a materialistic man. This Adam, this second Adam, the first Adam came about 78 trillion years ago. That first material matter, that first Adam, that dark child, that dark God, that had no universal light in him. The materialistic of the universe around him is what dictated his life. This was some 78 trillion years ago. And then the universal light touched that material matter. That material atom. Touched the materialism. Brought it into motion. And that material atom, that first God, his mind began to rotate, building itself up into the will of Allah. And once that universal light quickened his mind, quickened his soul, that power shined through that material matter, that materialistic God, that materialistic man. And he began defining the creation, giving definition to what was around him, giving the spiritual definition of everything that was around him, the understanding of the universe, giving understanding, spiritual understanding of who God is, how he created himself from that atom of life, from that force and power, how he began to rotate and building himself up from that force and power, that atom of life. This was some 78 trillion years ago. So now, 78 trillion years later, he, Allah God, intends to recreate the universe again. He wants to do away with the old and bring in something new. So Allah God searched into the materialistic matter of the people in the land. He looks through all the materialistic people that's in the land that have no spirituality in them. They just living their life through the dictates of what's around them. What's around them is what dictating their lives. So Allah God chooses the man out of material darkness. So now if we go to Surah 86 of the Holy Quran, is the Qamar by night. This is what the Qamar by night is all about. Allah God choosing one out of materialism of darkness and raising that dog child into the power of his spirituality and to the force and power that governs the universe. So now this materialistic child, this materialistic child, he's a materialistic man. He's crying in the wilderness because he's just starting to evolve. He's just starting to grow. He's in the wilderness. This is what if we go to Psalms 18. If we go to Psalms 18. Psalms 18, 7 through 15. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundation also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens, also came down, and darkness was upon his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yeah, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. So now, Allah God makes darkness his secret place. Allah God, in other words, Allah God makes the materialistic man, that dark child that has no spirituality in him, that child, that baby, that's just a baby of knowledge. The universal light touches that child in the wilderness, and that child begin to evolve and begin to grow, but he's not yet fully into the power of his being. He's still a child, but he's crying in the wilderness. He's crying in the wilderness of sin. This is that dog child. This is that dog matter that Allah God took out of the darkness and brought it into the light some 7-8 trillion years ago. Allah God intends to recreate the universe the same way he did 7-8 trillion years ago when the universal light touched that dark materialistic God, and that God began to rotate in the womb of the universe, which is the earth. His mind began to rotate, and he started building itself up into the fullness of his universal power. And once he came into the fullness of the universal light, he began to define the creation. Now let us move on. Now we go to 1 Kings 8:12. Let's go to 1 Kings 8:12. Then spake Solomon, the Lord said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. So the power of Allah is in that materialistic man, but that materialistic child is still a child. He's not at the fullness, at the apex of his spirituality. He's still evolving, he's growing. He's growing, he's resurrected. This is what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. Saying that when Jesus rose from the spiritually dead, this is what the resurrection is all about. That power of Allah God dwells in that materialistic child that's growing and evolving. The power there, the spirit of Allah there, but the child, the God that Allah chose, he's still a child, a baby of knowledge. He's still in the materialistic world. He's still got a materialistic mind. But the power of Allah is still touched him in his mind. The power of Allah there. But this materialistic child is still a materialistic man. He's still a man child. He's a child in knowledge, but he's a man because the power of Allah dwells in that child. But that child has to grow. That child has to evolve just like that first God had to evolve some 78 trillion years ago. So this is a child that's crying in the wilderness. So now, if we go to Isaiah 43. Okay, if we go to the book of Isaiah 43, comfort ye my people, said the Lord God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. So now, there's a voice that's crying. There's a child that's crying in the wilderness. Just like Ishmael and Hagar. The child of Hagar, Ishmael, was crying in the wilderness. But the water reached Ishmael in the wilderness of sin. That child was in a materialistic world. That child was moving about, doing materialistic things, but the power of Allah, that seed, was in the mind of that child. The power of Allah was there, but the power had to grow. That child had to evolve. And this is what the Come by Night is all about. Surah 86 of the Holy Quran. Let me check my device. Okay, we good. This is what the Come by Night is all about. That this child, this Savior, this Messiah, the one that God chose to be the ruler over all nations, the Jesus, the Mahdi, or whatever you want to call him, the Savior, that child crying in the wilderness. He's crying, he's teaching a universal light, but his mind is still locked in a materialistic world because he's yet to evolve into the apex, the pinnacle of his spirituality. Just like that child 78 trillion years ago, when the light touched that matter, took the matter out the dark, and that first God started to evolve and rotate in the womb of the universe, which is the earth. Now let us move on. So now, same thing with Matthew 24. Same thing with Matthew 24, 29 through 30. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. So now the sun, moon, and stars symbolizes Islam. Okay? And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. So the Son of Man was to come at a time of darkness. The Son of Man was to come in a materialistic mind at a time where all the nations are confused. All that's part of the darkness. The confusion in the White House. The confusion in the Nation of Islam. Okay? That's part of the darkness, and that on top, correlated with that is the materialistic mind of the child. That light reaching that materialistic minded a child of matter. Okay, so the darkness symbolizes the darkness that's in the land. All the darkness that's in the Nation of Islam. The Dianetics, the sorcerers. There's no universal law in the Nation of Islam. In the White House, President Trump, all his joint chiefs of staffs, all of them divided against each other. This is part of that darkness. This is part of that darkness that child is in. That child is in a materialistic world. The materialism around him is dictating his life. On top of that, there's no universal light. There's no Islam in the Nation of Islam. On top of that, the whole earth is confused. So this is what the Come by Night is all about. So that this child is crying in the wilderness. All this symbolizes what you see going on in the White House, the Dianetics that you see going on in the darkness in the Nation of Islam. All that symbolizes the night vision. That symbolizes the one that's going to come at night, the Come by Night, Surah 86 of the Holy Quran. This is what the Come by Night is all about. This is a part of that recreation that Allah God intends to recreate the universe. So when Allah God intends to create the universe, He brings forth darkness to the universe, as He did 78 trillion years ago. And pick that materialistic, God, that materialistic child 78 trillion years ago, and instill the universal light the power in that dog child 78 trillion years ago. And that child began to bring forth a law, though his mind was still locked up in a material world. But the light touched the mind of that first God that was in a materialistic world, that was in total darkness. He was in total darkness. He was in a materialistic world. The materialism around him is what dictated his life. There was no spirituality. There was no power to produce a body of knowledge. He was locked in a materialistic world. That's the darkness. So what Allah God intends to do now, Allah God intends to recreate the universe again. He brings forth a child that's mind is locked up in a materialistic world. And he plant that seed into the mind of that materialistic child. That's mind is locked in the materialistic world. And all the materialistic darkness around him, of confusion around him. He's crying in the wilderness of materialism. He's bringing forth the universal truth, but his mind is still locked up in the materialistic world because he has to grow. He has to resurrect. He has to come up out of the grave of ignorance into the universal light. He has to start. That's a starting point. He has to grow. He has to evolve. Okay, now let us move on. So now, Daniel seen one. If we go to Daniel, If we go to Daniel 7:19 through 22. Okay. Hold on, fam. Okay, it says that. Now we go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. And I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. So Daniel seen a child, one like the Son of Man, in a night vision. Daniel seen that child coming with the universal law. But this child was stuck in a materialistic mind. This child was in a night vision. He had a materialistic mind. He was in the darkness of matter. He still was in the dark. The universal light touched the child while that child was in a materialistic state of mind. The night vision. The karma by night. Surah 86. But the universal light, the clouds of heaven, which symbolizes the power, the force of power, entered into that child while that child was in the night vision. And that child began, once that light touched the darkness, it brought about a revolution. That child began to evolve. This is what the revolution is all about. Evolving. Once that universal light touched the dark, once that positive wire touched a negative wire, it brings forth a spark. A spark, a universal, a spark bring forth a fire, the burning. This is what the resurrection and the purification is all about. This is what the Jesus rising from the dead is all about. This is what Jesus hanging on the cross is all about. You got the negative wire and the positive wire. The positive wire enters into the materialistic dark. And once that positive wire touched that child in the dark, it brings forth a spark. So once that child was crossways, he was sideways. He was in the materialistic world. His mind was of materialistic matter. He had a dark mind. He was in the darkness. But once that positive wire touched that negative wire, now we bringing forth a spark. The purification process is about to take place. But that child was hanging on the cross. That child was hanging on the cross. He was hanging on the cross, and once that universal light touched that materialistic child, that dark child, it brought about universal revolution. This is what the revolution is all about. So now, if we go to let's go to Surah 34, 15 to 21. And then we're going to take a break.
There was indeed a great sign for Sheba in their homeland. They had 2 gardens, one on the right and one on the left. And we had said to them, eat of the provisions, and enjoy the gifts of your Lord, and render him thanks. Yours is a happy and beautiful land, and Lord, a great protector. But they turned away. Thereupon we sent against them a devastating flood, and we replaced their 2 excellent gardens by 2 other gardens bearing bitter fruit and containing tamarisk, and a few nettle shrubs here and there. That is how we recompense them because of their ingratitude. It is only the ungrateful whom we recompense in the like manner. And we had placed between them the Shebians, and the towns of Syria, which we had blessed, other towns facing each other and prominently visible, and we had fixed easy journeying stages between them. We said to the people of Sheba, journey through them by night and day, safe and secure.
Okay, now, Sheba symbolizes the nation of Islam. So it says right here in Surah 18.
And we had placed between them the Shebians, and the towns of Syria, which we had blessed, other towns facing each other and prominently visible, and we had fixed easy journeying stages between them. We said to the people of Sheba, journey through them by night and day, safe.
So now, Allah God wants the people to journey through Sheba, because Sheba symbolizes the nation of Islam, by night and day. So you got to come through that materialistic child in order to get to the light. Because the light dwells in the dark. The darkness of materialistic matter. That dark child. That light dwells in that child. That child is crying in the wilderness. He bringing forth this universal truth. But he's still a child. Because he haven't fully evolved yet. But he's on the rise. But he's still locked in a materialistic mind, bringing forth the universal light in the dark. This is what the Coming by Night is all about. Now let's take a break. I'll be right back with you. Alright, Facebook fam. We about at the end of this this session. I got one more part coming at y'all, that'll be part 2 of the Savior's Day. Part 2 should wrap it all up. So I hope what y'all getting out of what I'm explaining to y'all. I mean, is y'all getting the spiritual understanding? Because I'm trying to give it to y'all, as precise and clear as I can, because this is what Allah God wants y'all to know. Because Allah God is not playing with you. He's not playing. He's angry, and he's about to destroy. The wrath of Allah is about to come down, family, and we got to get a keen understanding of what Allah God wants us to know, what I'm explaining to y'all is y'all salvation. So y'all just listen. In part 2, I should wrap it all up in part 2, and hopefully, everybody should get it coming to the spiritual understanding of what Allah God want the people to know, want y'all to know, and y'all submit to the universal law. Y'all get on the side of Allah, to get on the side of universal truth, and because we can't follow Farrakhan. Farrakhan is going to lead you to the pits of hell. Farrakhan is a master deceiver. Farrakhan is the devil. I mean, he taught a good moralistic game. He taught good morals, but he's not in compliance with the universal law. Morals and universal law, and in order for you to have the morals that Allah God wants you to have, you got to come through the power, the universal law, the universal truth, and Farrakhan reject that. So once again, I'm wrapping it up in this session, and I'll be right back with y'all in part 2 of Savior's Day 2019 / Emancipation of a Nation, the final one. So y'all bear with me. We got one more session to go, one more part to go, and that should wrap it all up. So I'll be right back with y'all. Y'all tune in, y'all lock in. Stay tuned for part 2.